Well, our next question's coming from Randy in Charleston, South Carolina. He told me a little story about his most recent camping trip, and I felt bad for him. So apparently, before he went on his trip, he did what everybody should do like a pre-trip, make sure everything's going to work. The slide rooms were working just fine, and everything was good. He drives 600 miles to go camping. He sets up camp, goes to operate the slide room, and the slide room's not working. So I think he tells me where he had to sleep and where Mama had to sleep, and I don't think Mama was pretty happy about that. So they were there for 4 days. He gets back home. So he agreed with his wife, okay, I'm not going to try to fix this, because think about the scenario. The thing goes out, now you can't get it back in. So they left the slide rooms in the whole time they were camping. He gets it back home, tries everything, and it works. That's got to be frustrating. So now, in good conscience, he can't go camping again. I don't blame him until he figures out the problem. Now, he's got a Schwintek slide system. These are the ones with the racks on the side that bring the whole slide room in and out. Rack at the top, rack at the bottom. Got a bunch of videos on replacing those, repairing those, and diagnosing those. So go to our playlist for slide rooms and you'll find all these things. I call it a Schwintek. Lippert's going to call it an in-wall slide system. So from watching those videos, Randy was able to determine that he got a fault code 9 on motor 1. Now the fault code 9 basically says haul power short to ground. The haul power short to ground. Now if you look at your control box, where your motor wires plug in on the bottom, there's a color-coded boxes. So the haul power is the brown wire. So basically what this is saying is that brown wire is shorted to ground. Okay? And that's what the module is telling him the problem is. That's why it's not working. That just made me think of a way to tell you how to recover from that. So I'm just going to write the word recover. Okay. But let's stay with this, and then I'm going to remember that at the end, I hope. It's a trick on how to recover. It's not in the service manual, but it's a field trick that'll work. Okay. So let's go through this. Okay. Randy, what I want you to do, there's a couple different ways to diagnose this. Is it the control module? Is it the motor? Is it the wire? Of those three things, the wire's the cheapest one. So if you have a Schwintek system in your RV, it behooves you to have a spare harness, a motor harness, a black wire. They come in different lengths. I like to carry a 30-foot one as a tech because I don't know where the pieces are, and 30 feet's plenty long enough for me. You're talking in the neighborhood of 80, 90 bucks, okay? Shorter ones might be cheaper, okay? So it's just a piece of insurance. So I would get, because the motors are $400 or $300, $400, and the control module's also $400. So let's just get the wire, okay? So to figure out your problem, Randy, what I want you to do is orphan the existing wire for motor 1 in place, and then plug your separate wire in. It's easy enough to get it plugged in at the control module. When you get to the motor, you know, snake it outside, throw it up on the roof, and bring it under that little wiper seal, and just kind of play around and get your fingers in there. Sometimes these are really hard to get to, and I'm sorry, but you can fish out. The motor's going to have a little piece of pigtail wire about that long, but plug your wire into that. And then try it and see if everything's fine. The problem is either going to stay with, it's either going to still be there or it's not. If the problem is gone, plug your old wire back in, see if the problem comes back, bam. Your problem is your wire, and now you got to fix that. Okay. If it's not that, it could be the motor, okay? Overwhelmingly, the motor itself is not what goes bad. It's usually on these motors up on the top, they have this little motherboard looking deal with solder on it. So instead of stocking a $300, $400 motor, just get a solder iron, because a lot of you, it's pretty, just learn how to solder. I've done a lot of field repairs on these motors in the field with just a solder iron, okay? And it saves the customer hundreds of dollars on a new motor, okay? Sometimes the motors go bad, yes indeed, but most of the time the problem with these motors is not the motor itself, it's the control board up on top. A lot of times what we'll see is corrosion dripping down, or we'll see that the screw that comes in from the back on the outside that keeps that motor down has fallen out, and the motor spins around, and the wires get stripped out, so a solder iron can help you fix that. So it could be the motor, but you're looking for the brown wire that's shorted, so approach it from that perspective with your extra wire and go with that. Control boards do go bad. We replaced one not too long ago. Lightning had struck it, And I think in all my time working on these systems, I've only replaced 2 control boards. One was lightning strike, and the other one because there was a water leak and it just dripped on top of the board. But other than that, these controllers are very robust, okay? And the motors are pretty robust. So it's usually the problem I have is with the wiring. So, and overwhelmingly with this, and then I'll get to my note here, overwhelmingly the problem is because the screw that holds it down that's coming in from the outside is falling out, and the motor spins around. And so that turns your wires around and around and around. And there's your solder trick again. So if your wires are bad, you can maybe solder them back in place and not have to buy a whole new motor. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that, but I do have a note here on recovery. So let's say that you're stuck, okay? Now, if you're stuck on your control board, your homework assignment for those of you who have a Schwintek is to take a few minutes in a non-emergency, take a nice lazy afternoon, and locate your controllers, because if bad things happen on your camping trip and you need to get that slide room in, you're going to need to know where that controller is. So you might as well do it on a fair weather day and not worry about when things go awry, okay? So, but on that control module, it's going to tell you to recover. Help me correct if I'm wrong. I think you hit, there's a little window where you push a little button inside. I think you press it 6 times and hold the 7th, and then the lights will start blinking, a little dance for you. And at that point, that renders the motor switch inside your RV where the motor will only come in and it won't go back out, okay? So that's not my trick here. That's in the manual, what I just said. But that's how you're going to recover. If Randy, if you were out there and you got your slide room out but it wouldn't come back in, you could have pushed that button 6 times and held the 7th. I think that's the sequence. And then it would have come back in. And what that does is the control module ignores all these other wires and it only sends power to the motor itself, not the Hall effect sensor up on the top. So let's say that okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to finish up by talking about my recovery. It's like a little bit of a 2-step dance, those of us that like to do 2 steps. So to move your room in either direction, let's say you don't know where your control board is, but you can push the button and the room will move just like 1 inch or 2 inches and then fall out. Okay, if it'll do that, that means there's life, okay? So if you continue to do that, that room is going to start going sideways on you, and you don't want to do that because now you're putting stress on your gear packs, the gear blocks inside. You don't want to do that. So with your room in an all the way in or an all the way out configuration where it's totally squared up, okay? Let's pick a direction. Let's say the room is all the way in, and we want to need to move it out, okay? So if the room is all the way in and I want to move it out, and I've had to do this because the wires are bad in a wall and I can't get to that set screw on the outside and I need to move the room out a little bit, and you can't, using just the switch inside your RV for extend or retract, if the room is all the way in, you are going to go, okay, stay with me on this. The room is all the way in and I want it to go out, okay? The room is all the way in and I want it to go out. So using the buttons, I'm going to go in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. The key here is when you go out, you, human, need to stop the motor before it faults out. The controller's going to let those motors run a couple of revolutions before it realizes, hey, I got a fault. I'm going to shut this thing down. So you need to kind of do that dance step. So in, out, in, out, in, out. Now, when you do this in, you do it kind of quickly. You don't want the room to come in at all because you're trying to go out with it. You're sending that in signal to the control module, but not enough for that room to actually move. So in, out, in, out. That works 90% of the times on every time I've tried to work on this where the wiring is bad. The only time it wouldn't work is if the red and black wire in the wire harness is damaged, because it's only the red and the black wire that are feeding the motor. All those purples, browns, greens, and all this, they're doing the Hall effect sensor up on the top. So when you go that in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in is so fast that you're not, it's going in, out, stop. In, out, stop. And you're stopping it before it faults. Conversely, If it's all the way out and you need to bring it in, if it's all the way out, you would go out, out, in, out, out, in, out, out, in. In that case, you don't hold the outs so that the room moves. I hope that makes sense. I'm doing my best to explain it to you. It works great. I'm just trying to take my experience and give it to you. So, Randy, check your wire, get a wire, orphan the one in place, snake it around your RV, see if that helps you, and leave a comment and let us know. All right, thanks for the question.